All right, Friday, September 8th edition of the Carolina weather video. Let's get right into it here. There is a look at Hurricane Irma. I'm cutting this video later in the 5 a.m. hour this morning. And a little bit of geography for you here. This is Little Inagua Island. That is an uninhabited island that Irma went over during the night. A lot of nature preserve type things there, so that's unfortunate, but no human population there. Now this is the bigger Inagua Island. Southern part of the island is where most of the population is there, so maybe that island fared okay. This is Crooked Island. There are some people there. I believe the population is roughly 700, and the southern part of that island is next to be affected by Irma. So you kind of look up the line here. This is Ragged Island, only a very small population there. But then as you continue northwest, this island right here, this is Andros Island. There's a sizable population there, thousands of people of population there, and we'll have to see if Irma plays a direct role in there. The core of Irma may stay a little to the south. It looks like Irma may, with the exception of Ragged Island, that chain there, may split the difference here between Cuba and Andros Island, and that would be good if you could keep the core of Irma away from those land areas. But let me give you the latest here. There's the overall setup. Katia, Jose. Jose may be an issue for some. We'll see down the road, but let's talk about Irma first, and primarily here in today's video. There's your warnings. Purple shaded area, those are all hurricane warnings from the northern coast of Haiti through the Turks and Caicos, northern Cuba, all the Bahamas chain, and then into South Florida as well. And I'm going to show you a lot of modeling. I'm going to throw a lot of things at you here, so just kind of hang with me as the video rolls along. This is the 5 a.m. advisory, and what we've seen happen with Irma is an eye wall replacement cycle take place, and I think that's basically complete now as I cut the video. So with that eye wall replacement having taken place, you've seen a slight decrease in the core winds down to 155 miles per hour, so that knocked Irma down from a 5 to a 4. You're probably going to hear all the headlines about Irma weakening. I'd ignore all that. That's not a big deal. In fact, I'm concerned here because the waters Irma is going to be traveling over the next 24 hours, these waters here north of Cuba, these are the warmest waters Irma will have encountered throughout its entire life cycle. It is extremely warm oceanic heat content, high oceanic heat content here. The shear will stay light. It's just finished an eye wall replacement cycle. I think there's a good chance Irma strengthens. And in fact, if you look at the ceiling for potential bottoming out of pressures, this part of the Atlantic Basin right now is really the highest potential to get really, really low barometric pressure. So again, all that a complicated, long way of saying, I think there's a pretty decent chance Irma's going to strengthen again. Wouldn't be surprised at all. In fact, I kind of expect it to become a Category 5, assuming it avoids influence from Cuba. Now, that is not a certainty. If it interacts with Cuba, obviously there'll be some weakening. But if it stays off of the Cuban coast far enough that it doesn't disrupt the circulation, I think there's potential there for this to become a Category 5 and maybe even get to the lowest pressure it's had. We'll see. I don't know. Well, it depends on that land interaction. But here we go. This is the Hurricane Center forecast, bringing this to South Florida Saturday night. And then the Hurricane Center forecast takes this right up the Florida Peninsula and then inland into Georgia and Middle Tennessee. All right, let me show you some more detailed modeling here. And let me just pull this up right here if I can find where I put that chart. Here we go. Yeah, this is the European. Let me resize this for you. There's the European ensemble low positions. So all the different ensemble models, their positions, and they're pretty tightly clustered on that southwestern coast of Florida. That is actually very, very good agreement there. The European model specifically, the operational run, here's what it does with Irma. I'm going to resize these every time, so bear with me. But either way, there it is. And notice the European is very close to that north coast of Cuba. From there, the track continues. Well, these got out of order on me. See if I can get them back in order here. All right, here we go. So here's Irma approaching South Florida. And this would be a bad, bad situation for the Florida Keys. This is early Sunday morning, so Saturday night into Sunday morning. This moves right across the Keys and then into the Everglades region close to Marco Island there in South Florida. This would be better news for Miami, bad, bad news for the southwestern side of Florida and the Florida Keys, and Irma continues working northward from there. You notice this is staying west over the Florida Peninsula. Thereafter, European model takes Irma up into central Georgia, and then continuing further to the north from there into North Georgia, Middle Tennessee. That would put a tornado risk certainly in place in the Carolinas, but the heaviest rains, the greatest wind from Irma would miss the Carolinas to the west. And that, of course, would be great news for the Carolina coast if this track is correct. It'd be horrible news for Florida, great news for the Carolina and the Georgia coast. It's not a certainty that's going to occur, but it's looking more likely. All right, so here's the latest spaghetti charts from the hurricane models. And it's a little more east than the European, but notice pretty much every model is inland over Florida. So again, that would be bad news for Florida, better news for the Carolina coast. Now, there are some exceptions to what's going on here. The 6Z run of the GFS is not in my hand yet. It's just coming in. But the 0Z run, let me show you what it did. All right, so there's the 0Z run of the GFS, and there's Irma just north of the Cuban coast. Again, these want to get out of order on me, but let's see if I can pull them back into order here. All right, here we go. So this is the GFS, and it is a bad situation. This will be a disaster scenario for Miami if the GFS is correct. And then it continues moving inland just around the Miami area. That would be devastating. That would be better for southwest Florida, worse for southeast Florida. And then as you continue with that GFS computer model track, it kind of moves right up the east coast of Florida and into Georgia. And one more tool to show you here before I give you what the ideas are from me. All right, there is what's being called the Deep Thunder model, something being developed as we speak. And it's actually been doing pretty nicely to some extent with this track, and it brings Irma to South Florida. Thereafter, kind of bends up through the southeast Florida coast, and then briefly back over the Atlantic and inland into the southern parts of South Carolina and the upper Georgia coast. And that's a possibility. The Canadian is even further east, by the way, with this. Basically, just a little bit further northeast on the Carolina coast. So I cannot rule out those eastern solutions yet, those solutions that take this back out over the Atlantic. But I favor something similar to the Hurricane Center track here, where you see this track basically up the Florida Peninsula. And if that's the case, we'd be in better shape in the Carolinas than it looked like we might be 24 hours ago. Here's Futurecast, and I will say it's one of those eastern models that kind of keeps it east of Miami and then up the Atlantic coast there, and this would be bad if that's correct. But Futurecast has been having a right bias this whole life cycle with Irma, so I don't think that's the more likely scenario. So here's your most likely scenario. This moves inland through Florida into Georgia. If that's correct, the interior Carolinas, this is manageable stuff. We'd have a risk of some tornadic activity, flooding, maybe a little bit of gusty wind, but it wouldn't be a huge deal. Now, if this more eastern option is correct, which I'm not ready to completely take off the table yet until we see exactly when Irma makes that turn, but if that solution is correct, then we would have more of a significant threat with tornadoes, especially though with flooding and winds. So we'll just have to see. But again, I'm leaning more toward that more western track, which would be a better scenario for the interior Carolinas. There's the European computer model, a lot of rain, Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas is dependent on exactly where that long-term track goes. There's a closer up view of the Carolinas, the European rainfall. All right, so great weather on tap between now and the arrival of Irma. Just a beautiful weather day, sunshine, highs in the 70s today. Another cool night tonight. Weekend looks fantastic. You notice there's Irma to the south. Any potential impacts from Irma? Not until Monday and Tuesday. So there's Saturday, there's Sunday looking great. I do think by Monday and Tuesday, though, the rain, the breeziness, as Irma tries to make its approach into the region. And so we'll just have to kind of see how this all plays out. It's devils in the details here. I think the news is a little better for the Carolina coast than what we were looking at yesterday. But again, we can't completely rule out that eastern solution. I'm not ready to rule it out just yet. But positive signs for the Carolinas, bad signs for South Florida over the past 24 hours. All right, a lot to throw at you. Thanks for sticking with me. That's the latest edition of the video. Have a great weekend, and God bless.